Hello and thank you for joining me for part 1 of a series of videos that I'll be putting out every day this week, which breaks down all the fights taking place this weekend at UFC on ESPN +3 from a betting perspective. So every day this week I'll be putting out a new video which focuses on 3 or 4 fights, and then hopefully you can use the information in these videos to make better betting decisions. Now every single video this week that I do, if it gets 30 likes, I'll be doing a bonus video on Saturday a few hours before the event starts, where I'll be digging for gold, looking through every single fight that takes place this weekend to try and find good value prop bets. Now if you don't know what a prop bet is, let me show you. So these kind of bets here, if you were to bet on each fighter to win or lose, so for example Blachowicz to win or Santos to win, that would be called a money line bet. But there are prop bets where they tend to have bigger returns for a higher risk. So you could bet something like Jan Blachowicz to win by knockout in round 2. That would be considered a prop bet. Now I can't actually show you them at the moment because props don't typically get released until the day of an event or the day before an event. So if you would like me to do a video like that, hit the like button below. And like I say, if every video this week that I put out gets 30 likes, I will put out that bonus video on Saturday. But let's jump into the first fight that I want to talk about today, which is John Dodson against Peter Yan. Now, when the odds first get released for an event, or actually that's not actually true because I don't tend to look at the odds until the week of a fight. But basically, when I first start to research an event, the first thing I'll do is I'll set a list, like an order of priority. So I'll scan through all the names, and then without any research at all, just working from memory, I will try and identify where I think there may be some good betting opportunities. And the names that jump out at me, the fighters that I think could be a good bet, are basically the fights that I research first, because, you know, generally speaking, the longer that the odds are out, the more accurate they become. You know, if there's a really good bet, the odds are likely to climb the closer that you get to the time of the fights. So I like to get in nice and early and prioritize the fights that I'm really interested in and research those first. So of all the names on this card, the name that jumped out at me the most was Peter Yan. You know, I thought that he would be a really good bet to beat John Dodson, because over the last few years Dodson's become quite passive, quite tentative, and Peter Yan's obviously got great cardio. He's very well rounded and very aggressive, so I just thought that he'd be able to outwork Dodson like quite a few guys have been able to over the last few years. But to be honest with you, after researching this fight, I think he might struggle. I do still think he wins, don't get me wrong, but at his current odds, I don't love him. Now, Peter Yan's got a lot of hype behind him, and that's very justified because he's absolutely brilliant. And as you can see, if we look at the way that the odds moved since they were released yesterday, you can see that his odds have already started to decline quite a bit today. You can see that the odds have gone from 1.42 down to around 1.38, 1.39 in the space of just 24 hours. So they are definitely declining, and I'm guessing that's because the vast majority of people that bet on MMA don't do that much research. They kind of just skim win-loss records, you know, just skim through win-loss records and make their decision that way. They don't actually drill down to watch how, to evaluate how two guys match up stylistically. And when I first scanned through all the names, like I say, Peter Yan's name jumped out at me, but after researching, I don't like a bet on him so much. Let me just show you a little bit, talk to you about the reasons why. So if we look at his current odds, the average available is around about 1.39 at the moment, which looks to be declining quite rapidly, which gives him an implied probability of 72%. Now, John Dodson, I spoke about a little bit about this in the video that I did last week, where I mentioned that Aljamain Sterling has got one of those styles where he's just so awkward. A lot of the time, he can make someone look bad and turn a fight into a really close matchup just because his style's awkward to deal with. Now, when I went and watched Peter Yan's fights, or his recent fights, what I noticed is he's excellent when a guy will stand in front of him, but I'm not convinced his style is going to be as effective against someone with such good footwork and movement on John Dodson, who won't stand still. Because we haven't seen Peter Yan really fight someone as mobile as John Dodson, so we don't know if he's going to be able to cut the cage off. And what I also noticed is when he gets into boxing range, he's also there to be hit. And John Dodson's got extremely fast hands. He likes to be all the way in or all the way out of his opponent's range. So I think this fight could get tricky for Peter Yan. Now, I do still think he'll win, because at this stage in Dodson's career, Dodson's just so passive. He really struggles to put his stamp on rounds. It doesn't really show any urgency towards the end of the rounds to finish rounds strong. If he's down on the scorecards or if he's in a close fight, he doesn't really have a plan B, doesn't really turn the intensity up to try and, like I say, put his stamp on rounds. So, yeah, I do think Peter Yan wins, but at the current odds, an implied probability is 72%. I mean, to get any value there, you've got to cap him at least sort of 75 to 76%, which is a stretch when you take into consideration, how tricky Dodson's style is to deal with when, you throw bad judging into the mix, the potential that Peter Yan might have a bad weight cut, potential that Peter Yan might be fighting with an injury, and also the potential that Dodson catches him with something. I know Peter Yan's very tough. He's got an amazing chin. He's got that trademark Russian chin, absolute granite chin. But John Dodson does hit hard, and he's very fast. And the punches that knock you down and hurt you are the ones you don't see coming. And even though Dodson hasn't looked that dangerous over the last few years, this is still a massive step up in competition for Peter Yan. If you look at the guys he's fought, Douglas Andrade, absolutely legit. But other than that, none of these other guys are really on Dodson's level, to be honest with you. So it is a big step up in competition. So I do think he wins, but at the current odds, there is just absolutely no value there. And if we look at the odds on John Dodson, it's currently around about 3.23, giving him an implied probability of 31%. It's just one of those. This is one of those situations very similar to the fight that I spoke about last week with Eric Silva and Yaroslav Amosov in Bellator. It's just one of those fights where, like, I hate to bet on a fighter that's passive and who I think is going to lose. Like, if I'm going to take a gamble on an underdog, I want to see a clear path to victory for them. I want them to be on an upward trajectory in their career, or I want to be seeing signs that they're improving. For me, Dodson doesn't really tick any of those boxes. So while there is a little bit of value there, I guess, at 31% implied probability, I always say this: value does not pay the bills, doesn't pay the mortgage at the end of the month. We're not flipping coins here. This is cage fighting. And if Peter Yan beats John Dodson, which I expect him to do, you never get another opportunity to get your money back. It is dead in the water. So it's tricky putting your money into situations like this where Dodson probably should lose. So I'm personally going to recommend you pass on that fight. Like I say, I don't think Dodson's a bad bet, especially with bad judging, especially with how tricky his fighting style is. But I do expect Peter Yan to win this. But at an implied probability of, 72%, there's just no value there. So that's how I feel about that fight, guys. Moving on to the next one. Let's close these down here. So the next name that jumped out to me, remember what I always say, I love the low-hanging fruit. I love to place those bets where I think a fighter has significant advantages everywhere over their opponent and they basically have no chance of losing. So obviously one of the next big names that jumped out at me on this card was Michel Prazeres. He's an absolute nightmare. Total beast, very, very good everywhere. And even at these odds, when you see that Michel Prazeres is fighting, a young guy from Austria that trains at a small gym. This guy is Ismail Naurdiev. He's only 22 years old. He trains at a gym called Salzburg Top Team in Austria. And I mean, he's making his UFC debut. I also believe, if we just go down to here, I also believe he's taking this fight on short notice. He is. Let me just see when that fight was cancelled. So a really good way to find out when fights are cancelled, guys, is if you go to Google and you just type in the fighters' names. Naurdiev, I believe. Naurdiev. You just type them in. It normally tells you when the fight was announced. And that'll help you judge how long, how much notice a fighter's got for this matchup. So Ismail Naurdiev fighting Michel Prazeres. This article was published. It was published on the 8th of February. So he's had, you know, just over a week, I guess, to find out about this fight. This article was on the 12th of February. So yeah, call it, well, it's 11 days since that fight was announced. So say he's coming in on 2 weeks notice, but obviously it is an absolutely mammoth task to make your UFC debut on 2 weeks notice against an absolute monster like Michel Prazeres. So that is why Prazeres' name jumped out at me. I basically thought that Naurdiev, unless he was incredible, would probably get smoked in this fight. So there's a lot of his past fights available online for you to check out. But I'm going to just show you some footage of him here. And one thing that I want to say about betting guys at these odds, like I've just said, I'm not opposed to betting on any fighter at these odds. You know, if a guy's significantly better than their opponent everywhere and they've got basically no chance of losing, you know, you still get a 25% return on your money. So I'm more than happy to place that bet. But in order for me to bet on a fighter at these odds, they have to have basically no way to lose. So my research process for this type of fight is basically trying to determine, you know, what threats a guy like Naurdiev is going to bring to the table. And if there's a chance he could cause an upset here against Prazeres. So if we go into this fight here, this was a very recent fight from... sorry, it wasn't a recent fight actually. It was one of his recent fights. He's only had one fight since this, but this was from back in late 2017. So if we just play this is Ismail Naurdiev against Georgi Valentinov. And the first thing that I want to point out is that I've noticed that Naurdiev gets caught cold with big shots a lot. And we know that Michel Prazeres hits very hard. There you saw it there. Watch how Valentinov sets him up early on in this round for a right hand. And notice how he gets caught completely cold. See how he gets caught and stumbled there? How hard that shot lands? The reason why that shot lands so hard, you can see Naurdiev's light on his feet, but the reason why that shot lands with such impact and clearly hurts Naurdiev is because he didn't see it coming, which indicates that he's not an experienced striker, not really comfortable yet in exchanges, needs to get more experience. And that is the reason why, even though he's staying quite light on his feet, that is the reason why his opponent Valentinov was able to catch him like that. So if we just go a bit further into the fight, up until this point, we'll see that they've been kickboxing up until this point, 2 minutes into the round. And just in a moment, you're going to see Naurdiev eat another clean, hard shot. Here it comes. Any minute now. There you go again. So see, as they exchange, as Valentinov comes forward with a big overhand right, there's that moment where Naurdiev gets caught, and there's a slight moment of panic there. If we just rewind a couple seconds, you'll see that he looks very uncomfortable when he's been hit, and he kind of leans away from the shot. Now, against lower level guys like Valentinov, you can do that. But if you have a look at what Valentinov does here, when he catches him with the right hand initially, he'll follow up with the left hand. See that there? So, stuns him with the right hand here, and then follows up with the left hand, which misses. Now, that's basically how you get knocked out, because you're overreacting to the right hand that's landed, which sets you up for a bigger left hand counter. So, Naurdiev can get away with that mistake against guys like this, but when he starts to face a higher level of opponent, those sorts of overreactions to eating strikes can get him into a lot of trouble. So if I just go a tiny little bit further on to this point in the fight, you will see Naurdiev eat another clean, hard shot. Any second now, bang, there it is again, another right hand. There it is, another right hand catches him cold. Now, I wanted to point that out because I've watched a lot of Naurdiev's fights, and he does eat a lot of clean, hard shots. He does look very technical, does look very light on his feet, does look very good, but he does eat a lot of hard shots, and Prazeres obviously hits like a truck. Extremely powerful, you know, knockout power in every strike. He cannot afford to be eating shots like this against a guy like Prazeres. Now, one thing I'm going to show you from this fight is the ending to this fight. But I don't want to talk about it just yet. in that much detail. Or maybe I could. Actually, I will talk about it now. Let's just get it out of the way. It'll mean I'll have to flip-flop between making my points, but let's just get this out of the way. So if we look at the finish of the fight, which comes up in just a few moments, so obviously Naurdiev has eaten some big shots in this round. We're still in the first round. And then out of nowhere, you will see very, very shortly how this fight finishes. You can probably guess what might be about to happen since I've already shown you the result and the MMA record of Naurdiev. It's coming, guys, I promise, any second now. He catches Valentinov with a huge spinning wheel kick, Edson Barboza style, and follows up with ground and pound to get the win. So, very, very difficult to land that kind of strike, very difficult to land that kind of kick unless you are a very high level striker. So even though Naurdiev's striking defense doesn't look great, he does eat a lot of clean, hard shots. Obviously, offensively, he is dangerous. And that's not an isolated knockout, to be honest with you. If you look back through Naurdiev's record, he has a lot of wins, a lot of early wins by strike. So he beat Benny Alloway with a kick to the body, beat Andre Vasinka, knees and punches. Second round finish there by punches, 1 minute by submission, but then another knockout by a knee. Another knockout here, another knockout with ground and pound, knockout with elbows. So the point I'm trying to make is, straight away, where I said a few moments ago that when I'm betting someone as a heavy favourite, I'll only bet on them at those odds if they have basically no way to lose. Naurdiev's record suggests that he's got KO power. And even though we see records like this on a lot of guys coming into the UFC because they faced a really low level of opponent while they've been building their career, you know, to land a technique like that on anyone is not easy. So, you know, that spinning back kick was very, very impressive. So we can move on to the next fight now. So, spoiler alert, because I'll be flip-flopping all over the place otherwise. Spoiler alert, there is a highlight reel moment in this fight for Naurdiev against Ismael de Jesus. But that is not the reason why I am showing you this fight. I want to show you this fight because obviously Michel Prazeres' biggest strength is his grappling. He's got an exceptionally strong ground game, and when he's in top position, he's very difficult to shake off. He's also got very nasty submissions, devastating guillotine, nasty head and arm choke, very, very strong. So I just wanted to assess what chances Naurdiev has got of keeping this fight standing, where he's clearly dangerous, and what chance he might have of surviving on the ground against a high-level grappler like Michel Prazeres. Now, I'm no scientist, but with Naurdiev looking this dangerous striking, he's obviously put a lot of hours in the gym when it comes to striking. So at 22 years old, for someone to be able to land a technique like that suggests to me that they're more geared towards striking than grappling. So to go from competing on, you know, the regional circuit in Europe to then stepping up and facing someone like Michel Prazeres in the UFC debut, I'm guessing, you know, Naurdiev's ground game might not be what it needs to be competitive in this fight. But you know what they say: assumption is assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. And we can't just assume that. We need to study footage to be able to determine what is true. So let's jump into this fight against Ismael de Jesus, where Naurdiev's takedown defense and ground game definitely gets tested. So if we skip ahead here to this point in the fight, any minute now you're going to see de Jesus shoot in on a very, very deep takedown attempt. It's going to be coming up any second now, and it'll give us a good opportunity to see how Naurdiev defends it. So this is about 3 minutes into the first round of the fight. Here comes the shot. And as you can see, very, very nice takedown defense from Naurdiev. That was a very deep double leg shot. De Jesus, if we rewind and play it again, De Jesus tried to tie the legs up and turn the double leg into a trip. You'll see that in this replay here. Watch De Jesus' left leg when he's shooting in. He's trying to get it behind Naurdiev's right leg so you can complete a trip takedown instead of a double leg. See, that's where he goes, just that point there. As he drives here, see his left leg, tried to get it behind Naurdiev's right leg to complete a trip takedown. couldn't get it, and that was largely because Naurdiev sensed it was coming, and he managed to clear his legs free of DeJesus's legs, so that DeJesus couldn't hook the leg and get a trip takedown. Very nice, and that enabled Naurdiev to get his back all the way to the cage, where he could then use the cage to defend the takedown. So excellent initial takedown defense from Naurdiev. Very, very impressive for a 22-year-old fighter that trains at a small gym in Austria. Absolutely superb. But then, unfortunately, as Ismael DeJesus keeps working for this takedown and this fight unfolds, we'll start to see Naurdiev's takedown defense tested in a different way. So now you can see, if we just pause it here, DeJesus has had the initial takedown stuffed. He shot in on a double leg, mid-double leg, tried to turn it into a trip takedown, and that was stuffed. So now that he's got Naurdiev controlled against the cage, he's going to try and chain that takedown into a different takedown. Now that he's managed to grab a hold of Naurdiev through the double leg, he's got control of Naurdiev's body here, both his hands connected, and he's moving to try and take the back of Naurdiev so that he can basically throw him to the ground. Here you also see DeJesus is getting his left leg around the back of Naurdiev's leg so that he can shift his body weight and complete the throw, which we see here. Very, very nice. And DeJesus lands right into it. He was about to go into into side control, but he didn't fully commit to it. So he momentarily ended up in guard, just about past the half guard. But Naurdiev did a really good job of getting his guard back, throwing his legs up to attack. But as you can see, doesn't really achieve anything. What a higher level grappler would have done there after regaining guard and throwing his legs up. If you notice, when Naurdiev threw his legs up for it was initially an armbar attempt. In fact, initially it was a triangle, then it quickly went to armbar, then it moved to an omoplata. But as it moved transitioned into an omoplata attempt and created that space, he should have used that space to immediately explode back up to his feet, which he didn't. It's unlikely you're going to get that amount of space against a guy like Michel Prazeres because they're at such a high level. But if you let Michel Prazeres get to this position, which is side control, which DeJesus has been able to get because you didn't capitalize on exploding back to your feet when you created that scramble off the omoplata, then you're going to be in really big trouble against a guy as high level as Prazeres, because you will not be able to improve your position or get back to your feet when Prazeres is in side control. His top game is just too damn heavy. So that's what I wanted to show you there. If we scroll a little bit further on into the fight, this is another takedown. Oh, sorry, what I wanted to show you about this part in the fight is another takedown, which comes up in the second round. We just skip ahead to about here. Again, exactly the same thing that we saw last time from Naurdiev. On this second takedown attempt in the fight, you're going to see really good initial takedown defense from Naurdiev, which is coming up any second now. Here it comes. Again, a deep single leg shot here. Naurdiev shows good initial balance. When DeJesus gets in on his leg very, very deep, shows good initial balance. But as soon as DeJesus makes an adjustment and turns the corner, he completes the takedown. And even though this time Naurdiev does pop back up, you could just see that here the mistake that he makes, gives up his back when trying to scramble back to his feet. So again, DeJesus makes the adjustment, chains the single leg takedown into going to take his back, gets his hands connected around his body, and he can use that to establish a dominant position on the ground. So there's a little scramble there while Naurdiev rolls for a leg. Exactly the mistake that Naurdiev made off the first takedown. So Naurdiev is almost doing the right thing. In the first takedown that we watched, he initially did a really good job of stuffing the first initial double leg takedown attempt, showed great balance, got his back tight to the cage, but then made the mistake of giving his back up, and then when that enabled DeJesus to complete the takedown when they were on the ground. He did a good job of creating a scramble, throwing his legs up for a triangle, then an armbar, then an omoplata, but he should have used that submission attempt and the space created by that submission attempt while DeJesus was defending to pop back up to his feet. And again, he's made the same mistake here. He's done a good job of stuffing the initial single leg takedown. As the Jesus turned the corner, he was almost able to pop up back up to his feet. The mistake he made was again giving his back up, which let the Jesus complete the takedown. And then when they were on the ground, Naurdiev did the same thing, created space that he could have used to scramble back to his feet when rolling for a leg lock. But instead, he decided to just stay on the ground, didn't show enough explosiveness to get back to his feet. And again, he allowed the Jesus to get back in the top position. So if he does that against Prazeres, he's just going to end up on the ground for long periods of time, losing the decision, getting dominated. And again, De Jesus easily passed his guard and moved to side control. Prazeres in side control, you're never getting him off. And also from this position, Prazeres is absolutely nasty with a head and arm choke. You do not want Prazeres in this position. So, what I would also say this clip is showing is that Naurdiev's very weak off his back. I mean, I've just talked about it a little bit, but here, you know, in this position, Naurdiev's doing a good job of defending. He could get the closed guard here. You know, he could easily get his leg clear and go to full guard. But instead, because he's quite casual on the ground, starts throwing up a rubber guard, that enables De Jesus to move into side control very, very easily. So these are signs of Naurdiev, pretty inexperienced on his back, also doesn't show very good fight IQ on his back because he's not going for position over submission. And when he's going for submission attempts, he's not using those submission attempts to improve his position. It's going the other way and it's worsening his position. So that's just what I wanted to show you for Naurdiev's ground game. But then, the final thing I want to show you in this fight is if we skip way ahead into the fight, up until this point, before we circle back to a point I was making earlier on. Watch what happens in a minute. So this is in the third round. De Jesus is clearly up 2 rounds, so Naurdiev's going to need a finish in this round. And watch what happens. Any second, bang. Naurdiev hurt De Jesus with a flying knee, and then got a knockdown with, I believe it was a right hand, but I wasn't concentrating. Left head kick, very nice. So that's significant because this is in the third round of this fight. This is, you know, these guys have been fighting for 12, 13 minutes now. Very few fighters have that kind of finishing ability in the third round of a fight when they're tired. So the fact that Naurdiev is still this dangerous, this deep into a fight, makes him really dangerous, to be honest with you. So from a betting perspective, if we look at this fight, right, based on what we've seen, based on how strong a grappler Prazeres is, let me be real with you about Prazeres. He is amazing at chaining takedowns together. He does an extremely good job of shooting single legs or double legs to get stuffed and then immediately taking his opponents back, getting a full body lock on them and dragging them to the ground. That's basically what Prazeres does. And he's done it against much higher level guys than Naurdiev, much stronger grapplers than Naurdiev. So if a guy that we've never heard of called Ishmael De Jesus can do it, you bet your ass Prazeres can do it as well. So at odds of 1.25, giving Prazeres an implied probability of 80%, that's justified in my opinion, because literally based on what I've seen, Naurdiev only has a puncher's chance of winning. Now, that isn't really the case all the time, you know. Everyone's got a puncher's chance, I guess, but Naurdiev's puncher's chance is significantly more dangerous because he's shown, even in the third round of a fight, he's still dangerous. You know, that head kick that landed, the flying knee, the spinning wheel kick, Edson Barboza style, very nice. Naurdiev knows what he's doing and he's dangerous. So that makes Prazeres unplayable for me, totally unplayable, because with an 80% implied probability, with how dangerous Naurdiev is, there's a good chance he could land not a good chance he could land a Hail Mary, but there's a possibility that he could land a Hail Mary. But, you know, looking at Naurdiev, the average odds available, call it 4.25, giving him an implied probability rounded up to 24%. You know, he's 22 years old. It's his UFC debut. He's taking the fight on 2 weeks' notice. Prazeres is an absolute monster. Naurdiev, we saw earlier on in the breakdown, does have a tendency to eat cold, clean, hard shots. Prazeres hits like a truck. Very strong wrestler. Weighs like more than a grand piano from top position. And very, very dangerous with submissions. So, for me, Naurdiev is definitely no value there, even with an implied probability of 24%. But at the same time, I wouldn't bother betting Prazeres either. Not even worth putting into a parlay or an accumulator because, like I say, Naurdiev, even deep into a fight into that third round, he's dangerous. And, you know, in the past, Prazeres has gassed out. He's a strong, big, muscular guy that does slow down as the fight progresses. So, you know, if Naurdiev can survive into that third round, who knows? Could be interesting. And who knows, in Saturday's bonus video, if you take a second out of your day to like this video today, and this video gets 30 likes, and every other video I do this week gets 30 likes, Naurdiev to win by KO in round 3 could be a good prop bet. Because those are the type of prop bets I love. Without looking, that bet probably will be available to us on Saturday if we end up doing that bonus video. The odds on Naurdiev to win by knockout or TKO in round 3 against Prazeres would probably be about 50.0, 40 to 50.0, given that outcome and implied probability of 2%. I'd much rather roll the dice on a bet like that on this fight rather than betting Naurdiev straight, given his deficiencies on the ground. But that's that fight done, guys. We move on to the next one, which is going to be the fight that most people are going to be interested in this week. It's the main event, Thiago Santos against Jan Blachowicz. Now, to be honest with you, when I saw that Jan Blachowicz opened up as an underdog, I was surprised. Because Blachowicz was one... Actually, that's not true. Blachowicz wasn't one of the first names that jumped out at me. Because I assumed he would be the favourite. So I wasn't really looking for him. But when I saw that he was the underdog in this fight, that got interesting to me. And I'm guessing that's what interested a lot of other people. Because I'm just looking now, and even in the last couple of hours, Blachowicz's odds have declined a little bit. If we take a look at the chart, you can see that Blachowicz opened up at around 2.20 yesterday, and now he's down to around even money, which is a depreciation or a decline, or whatever term you want to use, a decline by about 10% in 24 hours. So again, like I say, the majority of people that bet on MMA don't do that much research. They're probably just working how I work in the initial stage, where I'll just work from memory. And I'm guessing from the odds movement with Peter Yan declining, Peter Yan's odds declining and Blachowicz's odds declining, is people have assumed, like I did, that Blachowicz shouldn't be an underdog to Thiago Santos, and that Peter Yan would probably be a solid bet against John Dodson, given how passive Dodson's looked in recent years. But after researching this fight, I just don't love a bet on either guy. Although, when I first wrote my notes for this matchup and researched this several hours ago, here they are, Santos was around about 1.70, so maybe I have to rethink things. If we put his improved odds in, that gives him an implied probability of 55%. That's more like it. Now that's getting interesting. This is one of those fights where, before any research, I favoured Blachowicz, simply because we've seen in the past how bad Thiago Santos has struggled on the ground, and over the last couple of years, Jan Blachowicz has shown much more of a willingness to take guys down and work his ground game. Now, Blachowicz is primarily a kickboxer, but some of his best performances, some of his biggest wins have been down to his wrestling. You know, if we look back at his record, he submitted Nikita Krylov in his last fight. Before that, Jimmy Manuel was actually outstriking him and getting the better of the striking exchanges. Blachowicz won this decision here through stealing rounds with cheeky takedowns. Blachowicz also used his wrestling to beat Jared Cannonier, and he submitted Devin Clark. So, you know, the last 4 consecutive wins for Blachowicz has been down to his grappling, and because we know Thiago Santos is so weak on the ground, I just automatically assume Blachowicz would be the favourite. Plus, the fight is taking place in Austria, neighbouring country to Poland. You know, kind of home advantage, and he's probably not going to have the crowd behind him or the judges behind him, but doesn't have to travel that far. Same time zone, similar diet, all those kind of things help. But yeah, after researching the fight, to be honest with you, Thiago Santos is a bit of a head scratcher because there's so many different sides to him. There really are so many different sides to him. At times, it looks like he's really, really tired and he's gassing out. And then out of nowhere, he catches a second wind. Like, if you go back and watch his last 3 fights against Kevin Holland, Eric Anders and Jimmy Manuwa, even though the Jimmy Manuwa fight didn't last that long, there were moments in that matchup where Santos looked absolutely exhausted. And then out of nowhere, he just catches a second wind. So, at one point in time, I would have said Santos has got bad cardio. But now I don't think he does. Because going into the 4th round against Eric Anders, he was like the freaking Terminator. He was going after Anders. He was going for the kill. Even though in the 2nd round of that fight, he looked extremely tired. Anders looked the fresher fighter. Now, when we talk about cardio, Blachowicz is also a bit of a head scratcher. Because I can't say Blachowicz has got bad cardio, but there are moments in his fights where he looks very, very, very tired. Very tired. So these guys are strange when it comes to cardio. They really are. They can catch a second wind out of nowhere. But what I would say is, when they look tired, Blachowicz isn't dangerous at all. His arms are very heavy. He becomes quite predictable, quite slow. Wrestling isn't that good. And he looks visibly tired as well. He takes a lot of deep breaths. But when Santos is tired, he literally still has the power to kill you dead at any second. So that's the difference between these guys. But what I would say about this fight as well is they're also quite strange when you don't really know what version of them is going to turn up. And what I mean by that is Blachowicz sometimes will really go to his wrestling and commit to it. He did that against Nikita Krylov, and it worked out great for him. He got a nice 2nd round submission. You know, very early on in the fight, it was clear that Blachowicz just wanted to get the fight to the ground. And he dominated Nikita Krylov by using his grappling advantage. But then against guys like Jared Cannonier and Jimmy Manuwa, who don't have the best takedown defense, Blachowicz didn't really shoot that many takedowns. And you know, the Manuwa fight in particular literally came down to like the last 20-30 seconds in a round where Blachowicz had hit that late takedown to steal the round when the round was close. But if he hadn't done that, he probably would have lost the decision. So, yeah, I'm not going to say Blachowicz's fight IQ is bad, because it isn't, because he's clearly smart to expose a guy like Krylov's weaknesses on the ground by going to his wrestling. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't trust him to go relentless with his wrestling against a guy like Thiago Santos, because against similar stylistic opponents like Manuwa and Cannonier, he hasn't. He's been really economical with his takedowns, which meant that he almost lost to Jimmy Manuwa. Now, Thiago Santos is also an unpredictable fighter, because at times, if we go and take a look at his record, at times, like against Eric Anders, he fights very smart. The Anders fight was a masterclass in fight IQ, really, from Thiago Santos, because he didn't exert too much energy going for the finish. He let Anders tire himself out against the cage, working for takedowns, and yeah, just an all-round solid performance. Whereas against Jimmy Manuwa, he fought like an absolute fucking lunatic, to be honest with you. Literally stood 1 foot in front of Manuwa and swung for the fences with strangely bad technique. You know, Thiago Santos, one of the most devastating and technical strikers in the light heavyweight division. You know, ruthlessly good technique, vicious head kicks, you know, knockout power in every punch. But he just literally looked like it. For that fight between Manuwa and Santos, if you were to put a green screen behind them and had like a picture of a video of a pub playing in the background, it would look like a bar fight. It was insane. Just both guys standing in front of each other and swinging. And if he fights like that against Blachowicz, it could get him into trouble, because it will open him up for easy takedowns. Whereas, like I say, against Anders, he fought really smart. But then he put in a dumb performance against Kevin Holland too. If you go back and watch the Kevin Holland fight, Kevin Holland's very dangerous off his back, and that was his UFC debut. And even though it was clear very early on that Thiago Santos had a massive advantage striking, and Holland didn't want any of him striking, for some reason Santos kept taking him down and putting himself in trouble. So it's tough to trust Santos, because Blachowicz does have a huge advantage on the ground, and if Santos falls in love with his wrestling and tries to start taking Blachowicz down, he could get himself into a lot of trouble. Now, what I would say is Santos has a massive advantage over Blachowicz when it comes to striking, as long as he doesn't fight like he did against Jimmy Manuwa. If he fights smart and stays composed like he did against Eric Anders, he's a nightmare for Blachowicz standing. What I would say about Blachowicz is he, like most Polish fighters, has got an amazing chin, but he makes the mistake when evading strikes, trying to slip strikes, he does this. Kind of just does this against the cage, okay? He just throws his head all the way back with his chin up to slip a punch. And he's good at it. There's no problem with that. The problem with him in particular doing that is when he gets tired, the speed at which he slips the punch like this and leaves his chin up and exposed slows down significantly. He becomes significantly slower. So in the beginning of a fight where he's slipping punches and avoiding them by leaning back, that's fine because he can get out the way. But as he becomes slower, he puts himself at much more of a risk of being knocked out. Now, another thing about that technique that Blachowicz does to evade power strikes is Thiago Santos is very aggressive. So if Santos bum rushes Blachowicz like we've seen him do against a bunch of guys, Manuwa in particular, over the last few years, and also Anthony Smith, that fight was chaos. What you would see is where Blachowicz is leaning back and taking up so much space in the cage by leaning back so far to evade the power strike. If Santos gets super aggressive with him and bum rushes him, and Blachowicz isn't completely aware of his surroundings because he's maybe a little bit tired or his concentration's dropping because he's getting fatigued, he could run into a situation where he runs into the cage and then there's no more space for him to slip that punch. There's just nowhere for his head to go, and that's where Santos can land a very, very hard punch against the cage or a kick. So that's something to think about as well. So, I've said a lot there. I've said a lot, and it's all a bit messy, but that's because these guys are chaos. You never really know what you're going to get from them. So what I would say is, let's just get back on track and let's talk about this fight and how the way these guys match up apply to the odds. Okay, so if we put in Santos's odds of 1.83, based on my before I did my research, I felt Blachowicz should be the favourite in this fight, just because of his willingness to use his wrestling over the last couple of years and how bad Santos is on the ground. Blachowicz has an absolutely massive advantage if this fight goes to the ground. But what I would say is, and if you want to fact check me on this, go back and watch the Eric Anders fight between him and Thiago Santos, is Blachowicz isn't a natural wrestler, he's a kickboxer. So he doesn't have the best offensive wrestling. He's a decent wrestler, but not the best. Thiago Santos, when he's concentrating and focused and fighting smart, absolutely has good enough takedown defense to keep this fight standing. In my opinion, Eric Anders has got better offensive wrestling than Blachowicz. He's much more explosive than Blachowicz. And he's also got a lot more energy to persist with takedowns for longer. Blachowicz doesn't have that type of energy. Blachowicz can't keep working for a takedown against the cage, and he can't chain takedowns together because he simply doesn't have the cardio to do it. Gets tired very quickly. So Thiago Santos is very good at stuffing the initial takedown attempt, just like we saw from Naurdiev in the last few videos. Very good at stuffing the initial takedown attempt. And Blachowicz hasn't really got the cardio, or to some extent the technique and explosiveness, to drive through and really push Santos hard to defend the takedown. Now, Thiago Santos' initial takedown defense is excellent. You've only got to go and watch his fights against Eric Anders and Jack Hermanson and also Elias Theodoru, to see that if you watch those fights this week, you'll see how good Thiago Santos' takedown defense is. But I have to put an asterisk next to that, or maybe his takedown defense is good in inverted commas, because Santos has lapses in concentration where he does the wrong thing and gives up easy takedowns. So if his opponent shoots in on him, 9 times out of 10 he stuffs the initial shot, gets underhooks in play early, creates a nice wide base against the cage, and he does everything right. Perfect technique for defending a takedown. But then if his opponent chains the takedown into something else, instead of maybe moving with his opponent and then focusing on defending whatever that second takedown attempt is that they chained into, so say they've shot in on a double leg, he's stuffed it, he's got his back on the cage, and then say they work for a single leg or start to move to take the back, instead of focusing on defending that takedown, you'll often see Santos make the mistake of either trying to take them down or striking instead of fighting for underhooks. And when he does that, very, very often you'll see him get taken down. So Santos is one of those really frustrating guys that's got amazing takedown defense, but then they shoot themselves in the foot by doing dumb shit. Similar to like what I said about Andrea Lee last week. So that's just something to think about with Santos. But what I would say is he's way more dangerous than Blachowicz standing. He's very difficult to take down. And he hits like a fucking truck. And as Blachowicz gets tired, he starts to get quite sloppy. And even though he's got an amazing chin, there is no man on earth that can take bombs from Thiago Santos. So what I would say about this fight is I do believe Santos is the justified favourite. And whereas earlier on, when his odds were 1.69, literally 2 hours ago, at an implied probability of 60%, I would have told you to pass, there's no value there, because that's basically where I cap him at. But now, shit's getting interesting, because he's got an implied probability of 55%, which is a 5% margin on where I personally cap him at 60%, which is decent. Now, it's tough, it really is tough, because like we saw in Santos' fight against David Branch, and also against Eric Spicely, and also against Gegard Mousasi, if you can get Thiago Santos on his back, he is white belt level, very, very weak off his back, just doesn't know what to do, and he can be submitted very easily. And Jan Blachowicz, as he's shown over the last couple of years, submitting Nikita Krylov, submitting Devin Clark. You know, Clark and Krylov are at a much higher level than Santos on the ground in terms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu technique. So, this is one of those fights where both guys have got serious weaknesses. Blachowicz's weaknesses doesn't really have the technique to get this fight to the ground. He'd have to rely on Santos making a mistake to complete the takedown. His cardio also isn't great, and when his cardio starts to drop, everything else becomes much less effective. So, what I would say is, with an implied probability of 55%, I don't think Thiago Santos is a particularly bad bet, but I don't love it. I really don't love it. I don't love it because Blachowicz will try to get this fight to the ground, and Santos has got a habit of giving up easy takedowns by doing dumb shit. So what I would say is, if you really want to bet this fight, there is a little bit of value on Thiago Santos, definitely. But be prepared for him to get taken down and submitted within 2 minutes, because he's got a serious deficiency on the ground. So just determine your risk tolerance. The way I personally work is, if you really want to find value on a fight, you can literally research every single fight, and you can find slight margins here and there on every fight. You can find a bit of value on every fight. It's not hard. We've already found a little bit of value on Dodson and a little bit of value on a Santos. But we also know that there's a really, really significant chance both those guys should lose. Both those guys could lose. So value, I will always say this, guys, value doesn't pay the bills. And when you hear these guys banging on about value and finding value, and it's plus EV, and it's a good bet mathematically, blah, 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 99.9% of these guys work in a job they hate, and they've never made any money from gambling in their life. Trust me, betting with that mindset will get you into trouble. The best way to use value and use implied probabilities is to identify situations where the reward you get from a bet is worth the risk you're putting up, and where you've got so much of a risk with a guy like Santos because he has basically no capability to defend himself on the ground. That is a hell of a lot of risk to take on for, you know, not even 100% return on your money. So yes, I do believe there's a little bit of value there. This is one of those 60-40 fights, but for me personally, it's probably a little bit more risk than I would like to take, because I do need to pay my mortgage at the end of the month, and I think there's probably way safer bets on this card. And if there's not safer bets, there's probably way juicier underdogs that have a much better payoff for, I don't know, possibly a similar amount of risk. So that's just my philosophy and the way I look at it, guys. So thank you for watching this video today, guys. If you liked it, hit a thumbs up below, like the video for me. If you didn't like it anyway. But if you didn't like it, please let me know why you didn't like it, because then I will be able to improve the videos a bit more. And remember, if every video that I put out this week gets 30 likes, I'll do a bonus video on Saturday where we go hunting for gold to try and find these big juicy prop bets when the odds finally get released, probably on Friday night or Saturday afternoon. But remember, guys, hit the like button below, subscribe to help the channel grow, and I'll be back tomorrow breaking down another 3 fights. Take care, everyone.